I was gonna end my life about a week before I hit rock bottom for good,
Mm.
maybe 3 days. And I went into the gas station. I was in DTs. If you've never been an alcoholic, you don't understand DTs. It's when you're about to die because you're withdrawing from alcohol. And I went to the gas station to steal a beer, and I was gonna drink it, and I was gonna go end it, you know. And this woman I had never seen before or since looked at me and smiled, and she may have said, "How are you doing today?" Or it may have just been a smile. I don't even remember. That one single act of kindness was enough for me to say, "You know what? I'm not going to end it today. My life gets good. I tend to make bad decisions back then." And so I started drinking again. I thought, I got this under control. Uh, I'm an accomplished man. I'm not even 30 years old, and I've got a big house and a bunch of cars and employees and a big warehouse, and so I can successfully drink a 6 pack when I go off work. And of course, it never ended it.
So you get arrested.
Yeah, I get arrested for the first time. I was on my way home from my warehouse and had a bunch of guns because I collected firearms, and I was shooting behind my warehouse, just blowing off
Mhm.
steam. And I had dope with me, and police typically frown upon people having a lot of guns with heroin.
Yeah.
So they took me to jail and charged me like I was Pablo Escobar.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Ben Owen, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So, with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today. And then we want to talk about Flanders Fields. We want to talk about We Fight Monsters. We want to talk about all these things that you're doing, which I think are incredible to give back to the community, specifically Memphis, Tennessee, right? But what you're doing is having rippling effects around the world. We're now in 76 countries worldwide, so we're going to tell the world your story today. Thanks again for being here, bud.
Well, man, thank you so much for having me. I am very grateful for you sharing that platform with us, and I'm excited to get into it.
So, where were you born?
So I was born at Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we were stationed at Fort Campbell. I was a high risk pregnancy and ended up getting transferred down to Nashville. So I was
Wow.
born in Nashville, Tennessee.
I got you. So, how far is that from
From Fort Campbell,
yeah, from the base?
about 2 hours, hour and a
Oh,
half, 2
wow.
hours. Yeah.
Wow, so
So
quite a ways.
yeah, it's a little bit of a hike.
I
My
got you.
dad was a company commander in the 101st at the time, and he had to get pulled off of C-130 on the airfield. He was about to deploy when mom went into labor. I think he was there until I was like an hour old and had to leave, and I
Wow.
didn't see him again for a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah,
So, where did you grow up principally?
bro, everywhere.
Oh, really?
All
So,
over the
bounced
country.
around?
We moved around a lot. Part of
Yeah.
that was the military brat thing. Fort Campbell, Fort Benning, and then Dad left the Army not too long after my little brother was born in Columbus, Georgia. Well, Phoenix City, Alabama, just outside of Fort Benning. And went over to Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, and Pfizer took us all around the country, man.
Yeah.
I've lived in 14 states, probably. Like 3 of those were just first grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mostly the Southeast. I mean, you can tell from my accent. I've spent most of my life down here in the South, but I've lived, both coasts, Minnesota, uh, all over.
So, what was your favorite thing about growing up as an Army brat?
I getting to see new things all the time.
Yeah.
Plus, my dad was like extra cool, Army Ranger.
There you go.
Yeah, like, and my favorite thing on earth is the outdoors, and my
Yeah.
dad shares that passion. So, we grew up doing scouts, playing outside, hunting, fishing, camping, hiking. Dad was teaching us, survival skills. Like he showed me how to make napalm when I was 5. I don't know if that's really a survival skill, but it's fun. Yeah, it can come
In some theaters, it is.
right.
Wow. So, growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Man, that's tough. I've always had a very close family, a great childhood. My dad's parents were very influential on me. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother in particular. She was a voracious reader, a librarian, actually. In fact, there's a library in Alabama named after her. And so she fostered that love of reading, but my mom fostered my love of learning. My dad fostered my love of the outdoors. It would definitely be my parents or my dad's parents that were the most influential. And depending on, what season of childhood, I guess that changed, but definitely those three
Gotcha.
are first.
So in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
So females. But by high school, I had pivoted. I grew up a little brainiac. I was a
Mhm.
nerd. And when I was 14, we moved to California, and I snapped. I
Yeah.
discovered alcohol. I discovered anxiety. I discovered drugs. And so the bulk of high school for me was a whirlwind of bad decisions.
Mm.
But by the time I graduated, I had reined it in a little bit. The wheels
Mhm.
fell back off that bus when I got to Auburn. But if I had to pick a favorite, it was math. And I ended up, the math scholarship to Auburn.
Gotcha. So in high school, did you have a favorite teacher?
No, I was not paying much
It's
attention. I
okay.
can't
That's
even
all right.
name a single teacher I had in high school.
That's all right. That's okay. It's just a question we ask, right?
Yeah.
Because we
I
know.
did have I had a favorite teacher in middle school. It was Mr. Davis, my
There you
science
go.
teacher. And I'll never forget that man, John Davis.
Yeah.
He was like an amateur archaeologist. He'd been in National Geographic magazine. The guy was amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. So we think it's remarkable how teachers can grab a student, like grab a young person,
Oh, 100%.
and have an impact on them. Like I had that situation in high school where a high school speech teacher who also was the coach of the team saw something in me that I didn't know was there and changed my life, like completely changed everything for me. So yeah, I mean, it just, and my mother-in-law was a teacher for 30 years and my grandma was a teacher, right?
Yeah, same
So
here. So
I grew up in a
my
I grew
dad's
up in a family
parents,
of educators, right?
yeah, my dad's parents were educators too.
Yeah. So yeah. So after high school, where do you go?
I went to Auburn.
Yeah.
I went to Auburn on a math scholarship. Started drinking again by September of 2001. I was well on my way to drinking myself out of college. I had just started my second year of ROTC. My plan was to follow in my dad's footsteps and
Hmm.
become an infantry officer. September 11th, 2001. We all know what happened.
Yeah.
I was at work when the towers came down, and I clocked out, walked across the street to the recruiter's office, and made the decision to drop out of college and enlist.
Yeah. So you go to so you go you so you enlist with the army?
I enlisted with the army, and like I said, I had been in ROTC,
Yeah.
and I was wavered into ROTC because I did not have an ACL, and I
Gotcha.
figured out that when you go enlist, the right hand does not talk to the left. So I just lied about all of that when I got to MEPS so that I could get into the army. Growing up, my dad's he served in the Carter administration. His
Mhm.
complaint was he never got to go do anything.
Yeah.
I didn't want that to happen. I thought it was going to be a 6-week war, and so I did everything I could to get to Fort Benning as quickly as possible. Ended up coming back and biting me in the butt. That ACL not existing ended up in a broken leg before the summer of 2002 was over. They obviously figured out that it was an old injury that resulted in that, and I had lied about it. So I ended up getting discharged honorably, but with no benefits.
Yeah.
And at the end of 2002.
Wow.
Yeah.
So so you leave the army. Where do you go?
Back to Auburn. Promptly drank myself right out of school. Like that happened very, very quickly. Um, Ended up moving up to North Carolina with an old middle school girlfriend that I had reconnected with, and we started a family. Went back to college, finished at University of Alabama in Huntsville, graduated in 2006. Got a job right out of college with Pfizer, so still trying to follow in my
Mhm.
dad's footsteps, I guess. And that's what took us to Memphis. So
Yeah.
2006, we moved to Memphis, Tennessee. Um, I was still battling a bad drinking problem. In Easter Sunday of 2007, I got in a single car accident and was ejected from the vehicle going about 130. Fractured my pelvis 3 places, completely smoked what was left of my left knee. And I got sober that day, but it was like, I'm going to get sober on my terms. I'm just going to stop drinking. I don't have a problem. I'm not going to go to AA or any of that. So it didn't last as long as I wished it had. But during that period of sobriety, and I was sober, I think probably it's 2011.
Hmm.
I left Pfizer, went into medical device sales, and then left that, started my own company, doing electronics recycling and e-commerce, which is something I had dabbled in when we lived in North Carolina. And it ended up taking off. It was doing really, really well. I had, a dozen employees, maybe. We were, big warehouse. Like, life was good, dude. And as you'll hear as the story goes on, my life gets good. I tend to make bad decisions back then, and so I started drinking again. I thought, I got this under control. Uh, I'm an accomplished man. I'm not even 30 years old, and I've got a big house and a bunch of cars and employees and a big warehouse, and so I can successfully drink a 6-pack when I get off work. And of course, it never ended at that. But long story short, man, the knee injury came with the methicillin-resistant staph infection, which recurred in 2012. And before I knew it, I was addicted to prescribed pain pills. And that progressed as it does with so many people, from a pain pill addiction that was prescribed to me to a pain pill addiction that's prescribed, but maybe not to me, to eventually heroin. So by Halloween of 2013, I was using heroin. it went that fast. And I started neglecting all the things that mattered. You can't run a business while you're trying to maintain a heroin habit. So, like, in less than a year, I went from T-ball coach, Cub Scout leader, business owner, to ended up getting arrested in July of 2014.
So you get arrested in July of 2014, and you're in jail. Now, is this the time where you got the fever?
Nope.
Okay.
Actually,
So I'm too far ahead. Sorry.
No, you're
So
good. You're good.
so you get arrested.
Yeah. I get arrested for the first time. I was on my way home from my warehouse and had a bunch of guns because I collected firearms, and I was shooting behind my warehouse, just blowing off steam. And I had dope with me. And police typically frown upon people having a lot of guns with heroin.
Yeah.
So they took me to jail and charged me like I was Pablo Escobar, man. That case ended up getting put on drug court, which today, I'm a huge advocate for drug court programs. I work with the drug court in Memphis, Tennessee daily. We house people for them today. But then I did not see it for what it was. I was not ready for the opportunity they were offering me. I didn't need help in my mind. I just had bad luck, and I had it under control. So
You thought.
I thought, yeah, but while I was on drug court, Erin filed for divorce. So the mother of 5 of my kids, that marriage, I destroyed it. And we ended up, separating. I met Jess. I was court ordered in Narcotics Anonymous. Jess is my wife that everybody knows. So we actually met in recovery. I was clean. I was, trying to work this program, trying to do all the right things. And, I wasn't doing it for the right reasons. So, late 2015, I ended up like messing up royally, both with Jess, with drug court, legal, like in every way possible. I screwed up.
Yeah.
So they terminated me from the drug court program, gave me a $200,000 bond, locked me back up. And that's when I ended up going into kidney failure while I was in custody. Almost died. 10 years ago today, I was shackled to a bed, and they didn't think I was going to live.
How did you recover from kidney failure?
A lot of antibiotics. I had gone septic.
So it was an infection.
It was an infection. Yeah, acute renal failure, not like a chronic thing. I guess the toll I'd put on my body over that last relapse, man. I mean, I was doing every heavy drug you can imagine.
Wow.
And drinking. Like I've drank an organ out of my body, my gallbladder. Like I was really going overboard, man. I had a kidney infection that ended up going septic because they didn't treat it, and so it almost killed me. I mean, fever was 108. They called in the chaplain at the jail. I mean, it was like that was it.
Yeah.
That was it. And
It sounded like from the story that you shared with us this morning that it was sheer willpower, like it was your will to survive that saved you.
it was nothing but God, man.
Yeah.
It was nothing. I had given up, which there might be something to that.
Yeah.
Surrender, I think, is a big part of what gets any addict out of it.
Yeah.
Like I finally gave up. Well, in that moment, I gave up.
Yeah.
That self will came back after I made bond and got out of jail and thought I got it together. I can do this. It took a long time to kill my ego. Ego was a huge problem for me for a very long time. I thought Ben knew best and Ben needed to be in control. And in reality, what I needed to do was sit down and accept the fact that I don't have to be in control of anything. That I can just, do what I'm here to do. I can be of service to my fellow man or woman, and life will have a way of working out. Took me a long time to figure that out. But so 2015, Christmas, I almost died. At some point in 2016, I made bond, got out, tried to stay clean. I think Jess and I both ended up relapsing late that year. 2017, we're rebuilding businesses like outside looking in. We're making a ton of money. We're blowing it all on the wrong things. We kept up appearances for a good little bit there, though. Like 20, we got a huge house. Business was good. Kids never saw us high or drunk. They had no idea anything was amiss. But behind the scenes, we were falling apart. And like mid 2018, it started getting real bad. And then by January of 2019, it all came crashing down. Lost the house. The truck broke on the same day. We ended up in the streets, man. Like we went from living in a 3,500 square foot house in a gated community in Arlington, Tennessee, to living on the dope track in one day.
It's amazing how fast life can turn.
It really is. It's terrifying, actually. We're all just one. I say this a lot, but I really mean it, and I've proven it to myself. We're all one bad decision away from ending up just like that guy in the corner. And I've proven that scenario to myself a few times now.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I never do it again.
Yeah.
But Jess and I both finally hit rock. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. I have a million questions naturally, right? And just so you know, I'm annoyingly curious. Okay.
Oh, no,
I probably should have warned you about that before. I believe in staying out of judgment and staying in curiosity. And so I call myself the king of stupid questions because I don't prejudge the questions before I ask them. Right.
Yeah.
So looking back, and again, we're all about adding value, right? And so looking back, what was the thing that, like, what was the pain? What was the thing that you were trying to medicate? Like, what was it that you were trying to?
For as long as I can remember, I've had this void inside of me where I'm not comfortable in my own skin. I am today, but back then that was the problem. I did not like who I saw in the mirror.
Yeah.
And I discovered at a very early age, 12, 13 years old, that I could change the way I felt instantly with things like alcohol.
Yeah.
And just as a side note, you already heard that I had a perfect childhood. Addiction, alcoholism does not discriminate, right? There is no reason my life should have ended up where it did. There's definitely a genetic component, to addiction. So it came from me trying to fill that void, from trying to change the way I felt using something external, rather than going through life.
Yeah, rather than working on this. Yeah.
Yeah. I had no purpose. And what I've found today is that void is filled with service work, and it doesn't stay filled. So I have to keep being of service. But just like with dope, it doesn't stay filled with that either. You got to keep putting the alcohol back in, keep putting the dope back in. This is a healthier way to keep that void filled for me.
Yeah, totally agree. Thank you for sharing. I know that was a difficult thing to talk about. I want to try to help people. I want people.
Yeah, dude, I'm an open book. There's
I know you are. I know you are, and I appreciate that about you, man. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wanted you on here so bad. I've been such a huge fan of yours for such a long time, and I just absolutely love what you guys are doing.
Oh, man,
So
Thank you.
Well, it means a lot to me that you're a living example of this is what can happen, right? And this is how you can deal with it. This is what I was dealing with, right? There are people out there that are listening to this that are going through that stuff. You know, the more we do this, we've been doing this podcast for 2.5 years now. You're episode 385, I think, or
Oh,
384. We have a lot of life stories, right?
yeah.
One of the things that we know is people suffer in silence.
Oh, yeah.
People suffer in silence. And so one of the things I had an opportunity to speak at Stanford in June, and I spoke to a public speaking class. It was their last thing. You know, they do a dinner at the end of every semester, and they had me up there as their guest, and they had me give a toast. And one of the things I told them was, I said, listen, take a word processing program, print this up, type in, stay in curiosity at the bottom, stay out of judgment, print it up and put it up where you work. If you'll just stay curious about the people that come in and out of your life will be so rich you won't recognize it.
100%, man.
Right. And what I find is when we ask, when we care enough to ask, right? When we just sit with somebody and we just ask them, how you doing? How's life? What's happening? How are you feeling? Right? They want to tell you. You just have to care enough to ask and kind of open that door.
Yeah.
Right. And get sort of past that politically correct level. That's, you know what I'm saying? Right. You get down here a little bit and you start finding the pain. You start finding what's really going on. And you know this, Ben, they want to get it off their chest. They want to share with you what's going on. And it's cathartic for them and therapeutic for them to get it off their chest, man, to talk about what's going on. It's just that our society is so, and Scott Mann talks about this all the time, the churn, right? Right. Yeah. It's just
Yeah.
that sort of that onion that you have to peel, right? And that's I'm trying to encourage people through this program to do that very thing, because a very wise man once said, if you want to change the world, start in your own little corner of it. Well, we're starting in our little corner of it, right? And that's what I love about what you and Jess are doing, because you're starting in your own little corner of it, and you're making an impact locally that has ripple effects, like I said, around the world. And that's a big deal. Okay. That's a big deal. And so the idea of having your story with us is a big thing to me, because I know how many people it'll help. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, so at some point you make the decision that you're going to go into, well, you're going to start We Fight Monsters, right? And you start Flanders Fields. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah. So there was never like a single point where we decided we're going to go do all of this. We never intended to do any of this. How it happened, my best friend, you probably heard this story. My best friend overdosed and died. Actually, it was about 5 days ago in 2019. So right before Christmas, you know, and he was like the last dude Jess and I were out there with. And, he and I, we met in jail. He was my wingman the whole time. Me and Jess were first getting together. He was my best friend.
Mhm.
And when Jess and I left Memphis, we knew he was going to die. We knew it. Me and him had found his mom after she committed suicide 18 months before this. He lost 3 dads to the disease of addiction already. Everybody in his life was gone. And we just knew he wasn't going to make it. And we couldn't take him with us because I was moved into my parents' basement when I got sober. We had convinced ourselves, and if you're not familiar with addiction recovery, this is a very common thing. People will have what they call reservations. And what that is, it's like this preconceived circumstance or set of circumstances under which you'll allow yourself to relapse. It makes the idea, the concept of getting sober a lot less daunting, because you can tell yourself, well, I'm going to do this for now. And if it gets too hard and X happens, well, then I can relapse and everybody will understand.
It's like an exit ramp.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And Jess and I had it in our heads that when Brandon died, we were going to relapse and everybody would understand, But when it actually happened, that was the farthest thing from our mind. We wanted absolutely nothing to do with a relapse at this point. In fact, we wanted nothing more than to rally people around my dead little buddy and lay him to rest.
Yeah.
Because he had nobody left to do that. So we used my social media presence to raise the money to do it. And we ended up raising more than we needed. And we gave all of the excess to the drug court program, which at this point in time, you remember drug court had terminated me, a few years prior and tried to send me to prison. So for us to give them that money, I think it was a God thing, man. It was a show of good faith on our behalf. And I think it opened the door back for them. But more importantly, the way it made Jess and I feel to have done that, it filled that void.
Yeah.
So for the first time, something not dope or alcohol filled that void in my soul. And Jess and I realized right then, like, there's something here. Now, we still had a long way to go. I was still living with my parents. I working a job for like $2,000 a month. We had a long way to go to rebuild our businesses and get all on our own. But we knew as soon as we did that we had to start something around that being of service, and using our platform to raise money for good causes and all that. So the idea was put in our head at that moment. We didn't decide we're going to go do all of this, but by 2021, business was back off the ground. We had a huge house. We had all of our kids. Life was good.
Yeah.
Life was really good. And we had more than we needed, which is dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And we recognized that for the first time. And, it was around that time God reminded us of a deal we'd made with him as our foxhole prayer, that if he got us out of hell together, we'd come back for everybody we left behind. Mm-hmm. And he called that debt due. And so we decided to start Flanders Fields, which we immediately got pulled into the Afghan evacuation.
So I was right. And September of 2021.
August of 21, August 15th. Right. Which is where we met Scott and so many other amazing people. And it's also where Jess and I were able to realize, like, we're actually capable of doing some pretty amazing things. That crackhead hustle that we kept from the streets, man, it helps you think outside the box.
Yeah.
And so we were able to prove to ourselves and a whole lot of other people that we're actually able to pull off some amazing feats that really don't seem possible, rational, logical. And that's kind of where the whole nonprofit mission started. Now we started Flanders to, specifically help vets battling opiate addiction. And so when we first went back to Memphis, it was a constant, we're trying to find vets all the time. And we realized pretty quickly, like, we shouldn't have done that. We should have just started an organization to help everybody.
Yeah.
And so that's what We Fight Monsters became, was primarily to help prostitutes, trafficking survivors, people impacted by inner city violence, dope boys, the whole nine. Yeah. So we still have both orgs. They're both 501c3s. The bylaws of both of them prevent Jess and I from ever taking a dime from them. They have to always cost us. We wanted it that way on purpose. This is our way of making financial amends to Memphis and to the world. And we've been able to do a lot of cool stuff. We've obviously we did what we just talked about in Afghanistan. We've funded demining rotations to Ukraine. We've located and repatriated American veterans who were killed in action in Ukraine. We responded to the fires in Lahaina. We worked 17 of the 21 funerals in Uvalde. Still work with a lot of those families to this day. Tornado response. We worked trafficking in Mexico. The hostage situations in Haiti. Shut down multiple fentanyl trafficking operations in Memphis. Disrupted a whole lot more than we've shut down. And then, something I don't think we ever really planned on doing, but we've been doing is when we do shut one down, we try to buy the properties and flip them, not flip them to sell them. Flip them into something positive.
Yeah.
So that house that everybody used to look at and say, that is the sole source of every bit of suffering in this neighborhood. Now they get to look at that same house and say, that is the reason this block is quiet today. Yeah. That's the reason kids are playing outside. And we've been able to see that repeat on several streets and what used to be one of America's deadliest zip codes.
Yeah. That was not too long ago.
Right.
So you're doing this in the midst of, you guys are going, so here's what I want people to understand. Okay. Cause I know you're too humble to talk about this. Okay. I'm going to brag on you a little bit. Okay. So I'm in real estate, been in real estate for 33 plus years, right? February will be 34. And I've been involved with Habitat for Humanity. I was actually recognized, full disclosure, I was recognized as a champion supporter of theirs.
That's
We
awesome.
built 10 duplex units in a home for a wounded veteran in Escondido, California, in a very, very rough, rough area of town. And we would go and volunteer. We would work, we'd swing a hammer on a construction site, but it was a construction site that was in the middle of
The
a
project.
rough, I mean, you look up blight in the dictionary, it's right. It's
Yeah.
a little worse than that, right? So what happened though is we went in and did this, and then all of the properties around, they call it the ripple effect, all the properties around, the property owners started painting. They started replacing windows. They started, sprucing up the landscaping. I mean, right? You've seen this. Here's what I want people to understand. You're going into some of the roughest areas of one of the most dangerous cities on the planet, and you're taking property that, let's be honest, there was a lot of crime committed in those properties. You're taking those and you're transforming them into something productive, something that is housing, right? Versus something that was a crime scene, something that was a factory for crime. Okay. I want people to understand that what you're doing is unbelievably amazing, in that you're going into the belly of the beast, so to speak, right? And you're literally turning things around. And it does have a ripple effect, right? You've seen it where the neighbors start taking pride in they start coming out and sitting on the porch. They start, like you said, kids start playing in the streets, that kind of thing, right? That's what a neighborhood should be, right? Crime turns a neighborhood into something that it should never be.
Mhm.
Okay. And so that's what I want people to understand. I want people to understand that this is what you're doing. You're literally, I mean, you're having an impact in Uvalde, which, I mean, I don't even, as a dad, right? I have no way of describing what that had to have been like for them. Ukraine, I mean, all these different places, all these different things that you're doing, you guys are worldwide in terms of the impact you're having. I just want people to understand. I know you're too humble to admit it, but okay, this is big. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. Okay,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
I appreciate it. I mean, it is a big, I know it's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
It, to your point about the neighborhood showing up, we've absolutely seen that. And, when we first started doing this, like the first dope house that we renovated,
Mhm.
I put a survivor from another dope house in that one. I moved her from one trap to another into a renovated one, thinking we're going to help her get all on her feet. She's going to pay rent. She'll rebuild her life. And the target's moved a little bit. She still struggles with finances. She's clean. And I'm not that worried about her paying rent, because guess what she's doing today? She's had 12 kids come off the streets through that house that are now either back in school, they're back with their parents, they're staying out of trouble. Like, that house has become a self-replicating piece of what the rest of this is supposed to be. And I'll be honest, when the first property developer came in on that block and bought up an empty lot and built a house on it, I was mad, because that's my block. But then it clicked in my head what's happened. Somebody else is coming in and building affordable housing for the same community I'm trying to serve. So today, when I go on Melrose Street, we've got 5 of the properties on that street. And I don't know who's got the other 12, and I don't care.
Right.
Because they're doing the same thing we're doing. So this street that used to be one of the worst streets in South Memphis is now, I mean, like, kids play outside unattended. There's no gunfire. There's not been a single violent crime since we shut that house down in 2022. And that's crazy.
So here's the other thing, okay? And I know I get it, okay? But here's the thing. You all have been a very, very important part of turning that neighborhood around. Before you did that, that developer would have had nothing to do with that piece of land. That piece of land would have continued to be a dump site. It would have continued to be a place where crime took place. I mean, let's be honest, okay? It would have been an eyesore. It would have been, right? And so that's the kind of thing that's how revitalization takes place.
That's absolutely right. That's
Okay. Like
opportunity
that lot where we built those 10 duplex units at home for a wounded veteran. The reason we even knew about it was we had the CEO of Habitat for Humanity San Diego on our radio show. And then he calls me up and he goes, "Hey, we're stuck." And I'm like, "What's up?" He goes, "We have this piece of land that's been gifted to us in Escondido, which is where our real estate office was, right?" And he said, we don't have the money or the manpower, and the city doesn't either in their budget to go in and clean this lot. This lot had been a dumping site for decades.
Yep.
Okay. And it literally had to be hand cleaned. It had to be hand, right? And so me and 28 of our agents went in one day and filled up 2 industrial sized dumpsters with I mean, there were used diapers. I'm not joking.
Oh,
Okay.
sure.
I mean, it was unbelievable, right? There were, leather things that we can't talk about on this podcast. I mean, it was woof, right? I mean, I'm not joking. It embarrassed me. I found it. It embarrassed me just finding it. Okay. And I was like, right? It was bad. So, but it was one of those things that was one of the most meaningful things we could have possibly done. Okay. So we clear this lot and the city is now going to come in and grade it. Okay. So we fill those 2 industrial sized dumpsters, they take them off, all that. It's now ready to be graded. Okay. They call me up and they go, "Well, we lost our funding." Okay. The state of California cut the funding. The governor at the time cut the funding, and they call me up and they're like, we got to scuttle the deal. And I said, "You can't." And they said, "But we have to." And I said, "But you can't." And they said, "But we have to." And I said, "You can't." I'm not above begging. I'm not above begging. I've been begging you to come on, right? I'm not above begging. I will do it, right? So I said to them, I said, "How much do you need?" And they said, 1.3 million.
Golly.
Right? And I said, "Well, I'll call Ben and he'll write a check." Right? So I just told him, I said, "Tell you what I'll do. I don't have 1.3 million or I'd stroke you a check today. Right? But I'll tell you what I'll do. I know the people who are the most successful people in this town and love this town, and I will introduce you to them. I will go with you. We will do the presentation together. If you're willing to keep this," because I knew what an impact I had sold the house right across the street. We called it the roach house, Ben. When you opened the front door, like 50 roaches went all over the floor. Okay. I mean, it was bad, dude.
Yeah.
And when the investor bought it as an REO, as a bank owned property, when they bought it, they put 3 windows in and moved a family in there. They were living in squalor, bud.
Oh,
Okay. And it was right across the street from this site. Okay. So I had experience there, if you can imagine that, right? So I'm like, we gotta figure this out. So I take them out and I take them to our first presentation. Richest guy in town. Okay. Used to be my landlord. So I go meet with him. He, for whatever reason, still likes me. Right? So we go to the presentation and we're sitting in this presentation and they're trying the person from Habitat's trying to do the thing. And he just looked at me like, "Okay, right." And so I said, "Can I jump in?" Right. And they're like, "Yeah." So I jump in, take over. I know it's hard to imagine, but I jump in, took it over. Right. And at the end of it, this very, very rich gentleman walks out with us and he says, "From now on," because he's talking to the CEO of Habitat for Humanity or San Diego, he goes, "From now on, you go on these presentations with him and you be quiet. You just let him talk."
I love it.
Right. We raised the money. That's why they recognize me as a champion supporter. We raised the money and we finished that project.
Well,
And it was a huge impact.
in neighborhoods like that. Sometimes it's worth doing things that don't make fiscal sense.
Yeah.
Because you know what the outcome's going to be. And like the house I just described where
Yeah.
Creech is at today, we spent $300,000 renovating that house.
I'll bet.
If I was going to sell the house, I'd be lucky to get 150.
Yeah.
But and I learned this through that process. My product isn't houses. We don't sell the houses. My product is human beings.
Yeah.
And if you get to meet the people that house has changed from the hands that built it to the kids that get to eat dinner in there.
Yeah.
We're talking, I mean, you can't put a price tag on that.
You can't.
So you have to look at, and not every block's the same way. Like there's another street where we had a similar thing, and my project manager, who was one of the lives saved by that first 300 grand, had to break it down for me. Like, this isn't going to be a repeat of Melrose, Ben. This is just dumpster. All right, let it go.
Yeah.
And so you have to learn, but it's okay sometimes to throw money at something that doesn't really make sense if you're not looking at it as a financial opportunity.
Right.
What I'm looking at Melrose Street as it's not just humanitarian opportunity, but an economic one, not for me, for the zip code, for the entirety of South Memphis. Because what's happened now is we have real estate developers building new homes on that street for the first time in 100 years, literally 100 years.
Yeah.
All right. And you can't replace that. They're
No.
hiring locals. It's like,
No.
it's an awesome thing to watch happen.
Yeah.
And that's need that to happen. We just went back there trying to get our friends out of the dope houses,
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. When you get to a place to where you transform a neighborhood and that neighborhood starts to attract capital, starts to attract activity, starts to attract people taking a risk. Let's be honest, they're taking a risk. Okay. Now, if you take that risk that they would normally be taking and you combine it with a whole bunch of illegal activity, they're not interested. That's too much risk. Okay. And they're going to go somewhere else. The fact that you did what you did, and this is what I want people to understand. People don't grasp this sometimes. You have transformed that community to a place to where that capital, those developers, right? They feel comfortable taking that risk because it is, and actually investing. It takes a lot of money, like you said, $300,000 in one house that's worth $150,000, right? But the ripple effect that had on the neighborhood and how it impacted the rest of the neighbors, that one tenant that you're talking about that saved 12 people, that kind of thing, those are only the people you can count, Ben.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't count the downstream either. Just like having a trap house on a street becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that drives everything down.
Yeah.
Fixing it has the exact same. That capital that you're talking about, the people bringing that in, that introduces economic opportunity to the hood. And I'm telling you, the number one reason kids come off the block and go into the dope game is lack of economic opportunity. So by bringing that back to the hood, you are ensuring the longer term success of the next generation that's coming off those streets.
Yeah, it's true.
And I think within a generation, we're going to see a very different Memphis, Tennessee than we see today. Maybe sooner than that. I hope it happens in my lifetime, but it might not. I don't care. I don't care because I'm getting to see at least a few lives here and there. But it's a beautiful thing to watch, man.
It is. It absolutely is. And the thing about it is, and by the way, Charlie Kirk talked about this a lot. Okay. He talked about the ownership culture versus the rental culture. Okay. The average homeowner in the United States, their net worth is $308,000. The average, according to the National Association of Realtors, and that's nationwide, the average tenant's net worth is like $6,000.
Golly, dude.
Now, take that $302,000 and multiply it by tens of millions of people. Okay. And now you're talking about people that don't have retirement savings. They don't have, okay. And you start going into that. People treat the homes they own differently. Okay. And they treat the neighborhood that the homes that they own are in differently. The same thing happens with people that are in that neighborhood that see the neighborhood being improved. They start picking up trash. They start calling the police when they see something, they say something, okay? They start taking, we call it pride, okay, in their neighborhood. They start taking ownership in their neighborhood, okay? It's a real thing. It's a real thing.
Absolutely.
And it's something that I want people to understand because what you're doing has more impact than just one house and one set of people. I was at a property that we're having remodeled right now, a couple of days ago. And one of the laborers was there, one of the workers, right? And he goes, "I remember you." "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Years ago, I worked on a house of yours." "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, you know my boss." And he said his name, right? And I said, "Yeah, I know him. Yeah." Well, what a lot of people don't know is that boss that he's talking about was really down that day. The day that he saw me with him, he was really having a rough time. He had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. He's kind of heavier. Okay. And the doctors were just waylaying on him about, you got to change your life. You got to change your lifestyle. You got to, right. And he was really having a tough time with it. And I had gone through it. I lost 162 pounds. And so I just said to him, I said, listen, this is not a death sentence. Okay. You can do this. I lost all 162 pounds using one book. Here's the name of the book. Here's the name of the author. Okay. Go get the book, take it home, have your wife start cooking out of that book. Okay. And all it is it's a different way of eating. You're still eating pretty much the same things, no sugar, but you're pretty much eating the same things, less the sugar, right? And you're just eating differently. Okay. And so when I walked in there, he looked like he was just completely depressed. When I walked out of there, he looked like he was on cloud nine. Okay. Maya Angelou loves to say that people will forget what you did for a living, but they'll remember forever how you made them feel.
Right.
Okay. That's what I want you to understand. You're on stage all the time, man. And you're on stage getting out of your truck in front of one of your projects. Okay. It's absolutely true.
It is.
And you have an impact on the people around you by osmosis. Okay. Simply because of how those things, like one of the things that I do when I go on a job site of ours and other people's, is I go around and shake everybody's hand and introduce myself.
Oh yeah.
And they all look at me like I'm from Mars. Okay. I mean, no joke. Some of them look pretty scary or pretty scared, right? And I'm like, hey, thank you for being here. Thank you for what you're doing.
Matters.
Right?
Everybody matters.
Yeah, everybody matters. And it has an impact. Okay. It has an impact. And you're kind of the king of impact. And I want people to understand why. Right. And I want them to understand that how you treat other people and how you connect with them can change their lives.
Absolutely.
Even if it's just a few minutes.
Yeah. Yep. Scott, you mentioned Scott.
Yeah.
Man. Scott talks about that all the time, man. I think our nation is craving a deeper level of human connection right now. Obviously we're wired as a species for that. We're supposed to connect at a primal level around, storytelling and shared struggle, shared adversity. We all understand that. There's a reason everybody loves the underdog story. But you turn on the news today, you look on most anybody's social media feed, it's nothing but conflict, division, hate, left versus right, conservative versus, liberal, Republican versus, at the end of the day, that's not real. Okay. And what I mean by that is in the course of my work out there on the streets, do you know how many times I've been asked how I vote? You know how many times I've been asked if I support policy X, Y? Never. Nobody cares, dude.
Yeah. Nobody
All
cares.
they care about is what you just touched on. How do you make them feel?
Yeah.
It's not even about what can I do for them.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is. Obviously, there's that transactional aspect to what we do when we're out there meeting, basic human needs. But more often than not, and if we're looking below the waterline on it, it's about how we make them feel.
Yeah.
Do we make them feel valued? Do they feel like an equal partner in whatever's going on? In the work we're doing, that second question is very critical.
Yeah.
I'm in their neighborhood. It's not mine anymore. I'm not on the streets now. I'm there by choice trying to fix things. It's theirs. Am I looking at them as an equal partner, regardless of which side of the law they're on, regardless of which side of the dope game they're on? Am I treating them like an equal? And that the answer to that question is going to make or break you out there.
Absolutely true.
Tangent there, but you know what I'm getting at.
No, I got you. And I love the tangent. You made me think of a previous guest that we had on our podcast. He's now the mayor of Escondido, California. Okay. He was homeless and addicted to drugs. Okay.
Look, I may be prejudiced because that's my background, but I think we need more guys like that in public office.
Yeah, we really do.
I'm not saying that because I think addicts are anything special. I'm saying that because I think we need more elected officials that represent a broader swathe of humanity. Like, give me a guy that's had to fight. Give me a guy that's been scuffed up and had to struggle, or a woman, somebody that's been through the middle of the suck and came out on top of it. That's the person I'll follow into battle.
Yeah.
And I think that is the type of elected officials at a community level that we need.
Absolutely. I totally agree. That's why I campaigned for him.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I literally made hundreds of phone calls
awesome.
to help get him elected. Okay. And we had him on the podcast. And so he's addicted to drugs. He's homeless. His mom kicked him out of her house, all this stuff. Right. And he's out, high on drugs and out in a parking lot, runs into two missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Okay. And they get his phone number and they start texting him and inviting him to things and all this kind of stuff. Right. He never answers. He gets arrested. He goes in front of a judge and the judge says, you either go to prison or you go to rehab. What do you think he chose? Right.
Rehab every time.
So he chooses rehab. He's in rehab for 30 days, court mandated rehab. He's in rehab for 30 days. He goes to his mother and he said, who let him stay in her garage. Okay. He said, I'm going to quit rehab. He thought she was going to say, you're out of here. I never want to see you again. Right. Move out of my garage, type thing. Right. And she said, why? And he said, because I've lost all my friends. Well, all of his friends were druggies, right? They were all part of the scene. Okay. And that's part of what rehab does. Rehab detaches you, this, right? And so he tells his mother, he says, I don't have any friends. I've lost all my friends. And she said, okay, here's what you do. It's a Friday night. She says, here's what you do. Pray to God tonight and be specific about what you're looking for in a friend, what kind of friends you want. Okay. So he prayed to God, told God that he wanted friends that wouldn't leave him. And he wanted friends that were into motocross and mountain biking. True story.
I love it.
The very next morning, he gets a text message from the missionaries. And they said, hey, one of the members of our church has a barbecue tonight at his house. Would you like to come? It's at 6:00. He answers back, yes. They send him the address. He shows up at 6. He walks in the front door. And on all 4 walls of the front room are motocross posters.
That's amazing. I love that.
Okay. So he walks in and he starts talking and they're like, hey, you know what? One of the members of our church, Mike, is not here, but he's an avid mountain biker. He goes mountain biking every Saturday. We need to introduce you. So they introduce him to Mike. Mike has an extra mountain bike, comes and gets him every Saturday and takes him mountain biking.
That's awesome.
Gets to know Mike. Turns out Mike is a city council member in the city of Escondido. True story. So this guy makes it through rehab, becomes real good friends with Mike. He's at Mike's house hanging out one day, and a young lady walks in the door. Turns out it's Mike's daughter, who's just back from college on a break. He's now married to her and has 2 beautiful kids with her.
Dude, that's amazing.
Okay.
That is amazing.
So I do this interview, amazing story, right? I do this interview, and about a week later, I'm driving down the street in my truck, and I have F-150, right? I'm driving down the street in my truck, and I see these 2 missionaries walking, and God tells me to turn my truck around and go talk to them, to encourage them, right? And so I turn my truck around and I park it and I get out, and they're, my daughter tells me that when I have my sunglasses on, I look like a cop. I guess I'm intimidating, right? So I'm 6'3", 250, right? I'm a pretty good sized guy. So I get out of my truck. I'm like, hey fellas, can I talk to you for a second? I took my glasses off. They looked like they were really nervous, right? And so I told them this story about him. And I said, here's what I want you to know. The people who came before you that were here, they texted him a bunch and he never answered them back. But then they texted him that one day and he answered back and it changed his life. I just want to encourage you to keep going. Don't stop texting just because people ghost you or just because okay? I think this is an important life lesson.
Oh,
okay? I want people to hear this. And they started crying. And they said to me, we were really down and we needed this encouragement. Okay? That's the kind of impact you can have with people. Everybody can have it.
Absolutely.
Okay? You don't need a podcast to do it. You don't need to, right? You can have an impact. And so that's what I wanted people to hear. So thanks for letting me tell that story. I appreciate it. It's one of my favorite stories. I just love that guy.
I love that too. That's awesome. Along that same vein, I was gonna end my life about a week before I hit rock bottom for good,
Mm.
maybe 3 days, and I went into the gas station. I was in DTs. If you've never been an alcoholic, you don't understand DTs. It's when you're about to die because you're withdrawing from alcohol. And I went to the gas station to steal a beer, and I was going to drink it, and I was going to go end it. And this woman I had never seen before or since looked at me and smiled, and she may have said, "How are you doing today?" Or she may have just been a smile. I don't even remember. That one single act of kindness was enough for me to say, "You know what? I'm not going to end it today. Let's see how I feel tomorrow." And 3 days later, I hit rock bottom, and the rest is history. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. If that stranger had not smiled and maybe spoken to me, I don't know that I'd be here today. That is the literal tiniest act of human kindness. Just smiling at a stranger, and look where we're at and what all's happened today as a result of that. So if there's anything I can leave your listeners with, that story Mike just told about the missionaries and encouraging them, dude, y'all have no idea how spot on that is. The tiniest act of encouragement. Just show somebody else they matter, that they're a human, and that you see them. It can literally change the world.
It really can. And it can change your life and their life. Okay.
Yep.
And that's what I want people to understand, right? I want people to understand that you think you don't matter. There's a lot of people out there that think they don't matter. A lot of people out there that think that nobody's paying attention. I got news for you. They are. Yep. Kids are paying attention. Everybody, right? Everybody's paying attention. And you're on stage all the time. And even a smaller thing as saying hi and greeting somebody with a smile. Okay. It's a big, big deal. It's a big deal. Ben, I cannot thank you enough for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been amazing. So if people want to reach out and support you, we want them to go to We Fight Monsters. Is it WeFightMonsters.org?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So WeFightMonsters.org, FlandersFields.org.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then is there any other way that you'd like for them to reach out to you?
We got a few things. There's monstersapparel.com. We sell a lot of t-shirts and stuff that help fund our work. If you're interested in learning how to do what we do and you want to financially support us and get lessons and classes and all that, there's owenarmy.com.
Beautiful.
And then, of course, the two sites you just mentioned are the most important. WeFightMonsters.org, FlandersFields.org. I'm on every major social media platform. My name's Ben Owen. I'm not a hard guy to find. Mike, I love you, man. Thank you, brother.
You've been awesome, dude. Thank you. Thank you. This has been amazing.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.